Okay, general prologue to the Canterbury Tales, and this is, you can see, we were studying now. We shall study about doctor. There was also a medical doctor with us, the best doctor in the whole world. This doctor knew astrology and the workings of the natural world, and would only treat his patients when it was astrologically safe to do so. He knew the movement of the planets and had studied all the great theories of disease and medicine. He knew the cause of every disease and where it came from. He was really a great doctor. Once he had figured out which disease his patient had, he immediately gave him the cure. He and the pharmacists had quite the racket going and were quick to prescribe drugs so that they'd both profit. He ate a simple food, and that was nutritious and easy to digest. Nothing more, and nothing more. He mostly read the Bible. He wore bright red and blue clothes made of the finest woven silk, but he saved the rest of his money because he really loved gold more than anything else. And there was a wife from the city of Bath, a new character, uh, Bath, England. Bath is the place in England, the name of a city, very famous, I think. She had a striking noble face that had a reddish tint to it, and though sorry to say, she had a gap in her front teeth and was a little bit deaf. She wore a hat that was as wide as a shield, sharp spurs, and a plated cloak over her legs to keep the mud off her dress. He also wore tightly laced red stockings and comfortable new shoes, and her kerchief, that means handkerchief, were made of high quality fabric. In fact, the ones she wore on her head every Sunday were so nice they must have weighed 10 pounds. And she was so good at weaving clothes, and she was even better than the famous weavers from the cities of Ypres, maybe Cyprus, and Ghent in Belgium. No, Ypres and Ghent, these are the cities, places in Belgium. She'd lived an honorable life and had married 5 times, not counting her other boyfriends she'd had when she was young. Though there's no need to talk about that now. She was the kind of woman who always wanted to be the first wife at church to make a donation to help the poor, but would get angry and keep her money if any woman made a donation before she did. She rode her horse well and knew a lot about traveling because she'd been to so many foreign places. She'd also been on religious pilgrimages to the cities of Rome and Bologna in Italy, and to the shrine of Saint James in Spain, and to Cologne, France. She was a good conversational, conversationalist. She was a good conversationalist and liked to laugh and gossip with others. She could tell lots of stories, especially romantic ones, because she was an old pro when it came to love. And then there was a parson. Okay, there was also a parson, the priest of a rural country church. He was a good man, a person who thought only holy thoughts and did only good deeds. He was very gentle, diligent, and always patient in the face of adversity. He wouldn't look down on any of his poor parishioners for not doing for not donating money into the church. In fact, he did not give them what little money he himself had, especially since he lived happily on very little. He didn't think himself better than others, but he would scold people for being too stubborn in their ways. The country where he lived was large and the houses were spread far apart, but that didn't stop him from visiting everyone of his parishioners, rich or poor, with his walking stick. It had a stick in hand. He had to make his rounds from house to house, no matter what, even if he was sick or it was raining. He truly was the embodiment of the teaching of Jesus Christ. He lived as he preached, which set the perfect example of his parishioners. His flock of sheep. He lived by the motto, "If gold rusts, what would iron do?" By which he meant the priest must live a holy life if he expects ordinary people to live holy lives. All hope is lost if he turns out to be corrupt. It's a shame. It's a shame whenever you see a filthy shepherd watching over clean sheep, which is why priests should live by example to show their sheep how to live. The parson remained loyal to his philosophers and would never think about leaving them for a more prestigious spot in London, post in London, or to make more money working for a church on a wealthy landowner's estate. He wasn't interested in wealth or status and wasn't obsessed with the philosophy of ethics or morality. No, he was merely a simple shepherd who sought to save the souls of his flock by living a good life himself and setting a good example. I believe he was the finest priest in the world. Two more pages to go for this video. Now, next, there was a plowman, perhaps a farmer, Loman in our group who was actually the parson's brother. He wore a simple shirt and rode upon a horse. He was a lowly laborer who worked with his hands. His love for God was always foremost in his thoughts. When he was both happy and sad, he also thought about the needs and wants of others. Of others, other people, and had just as much love for others as he had for himself. He had carried many loads of manure and would dig and work hard, all for the love of God and humanity. If he could, he donated a good percentage of his income and the value of his other property to the church on a regular basis. He was a good and a loyal man who lived in happiness and peace. There were six other people in our group too, and they were a weaver, an overseer who looked after his master's property, Munshi. There was also a miller who owned a mill that turned grain into flour. And there was also two court officials, a summoner who was a bailiff in the court, and a mansper who was in charge of buying the food and provisions for the court. And finally, there was a partner, an officer who sold formal pardons to criminals after they confessed their sins to God. And then, of course, there was me, and that was all of us. The miller was short, and he was still a pretty big guy, muscular, broad, and big boned. He liked to prove how strong he was by wrestling other people whenever he went, wherever he went, and he always won the matches. There wasn't a door he couldn't either rip off his hinges or break down with a running headbutt. He wore a white coat with a blue hood and carried a sword and a small shield at his side. He loved to talk, and he could tell the best war stories, most of them about sex and sin. He would steal corn and then sell it for 3 times its worth. He had a beard that was as red as a fox and about the same size and shape as a gardening spade. He had a wide mouth, deep gaping nostrils, and a wart on the tip of the nose that bristled with red hairs that looked like they grew out of a ears. He could play the bagpipes well, and he played for us as well as we left town. There was also a manciple, a clerk in charge of buying food and provisions for the inner temple, one of the courts in London. Other municipals could really learn from this guy who was so careful about what he purchased and what he spent that he always saved a lot of money. He worked for 30 lives, all of whom were very smart and educated in the law, At least a dozen of them manage the wealth and lands of some of the most powerful aristocrats in England. Their job was to help the lords save money and help keep them out of debt. And yet, the Mansper was wiser with money than all of them. It's a proof of God's grace that an uneducated man with natural intelligence, such as this Mansper, can be smarter and more successful than some of the most educated men. Then there was the reeve, an overseer who looked after his master's lands and property in the town of Bordeswell in Norfolk, England. He was a bad-tempered guy who got angry easily. The hair on his head was clipped very short, like a priest's, and nearly shaved clean around his ears. He also had a neatly trimmed beard, which was also shaved pretty close. He was tall and slender and had gangly legs that looked like sticks. You couldn't even see his calves. He'd been in charge of his master's estate since he was 20 years old. He was very meticulous about his job, and no one could fault him for being inaccurate. He always knew how much grain was in the granary and could figure out crop yields in advance based on solely on how much rain had fallen that year. He knew every one of his lord's horses, chickens, cows, sheep, and pigs. All the other peasants who worked for the landlord were terrified of the reed because he could tell when they were lying or trying to cheat him. He'd been a carpenter when he was younger and was still pretty good at it. He had a house underneath some shade trees in the middle of a meadow. He knew more about money and property than his master, which is now he was able to save up a small fortune over these years. It also helped that he had been quietly uh, tricky, tricking his master all along by lending him things he already owned, for example, and then taking the master's thank you gifts in return. He rode a sturdy blue horse, a dappled grey named Scott, and wore a rusty sword. He wore a long blue coat that he wore draped around him, which made him look like the friar he rode last in our group. So far, there's maybe 1 to 2 videos more on this general prologue to the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, Geoffrey Chaucer. So keep watching, and if you have not yet, please subscribe our channel and press the like and bell button to get the first from me. Thank you for watching. Have a nice time. Goodbye.